Hello and welcome to a Rogue Entity tutorial. In this tutorial we're going to be creating the selection and deselection markers as well as a preview marker for an RTS setup. We're going to use a VFX sprite for that, different to what you'd normally use like a decal. The benefit of that is we can add animation and other effects to our selection. I won't be going deep into effects, definitely have the base there. I'm only starting out on effects myself, so I am not real sophisticated with that part yet, but I definitely can give you the base. And this is just a preview of what we'll be creating. So we've got a selection marker around the unit. I've got a preview of where he's going to potentially move to. And if I click, it'll create a destination marker, and I've got some basic animation just through the material there. And we'll do this setup here. This is just like a quick setup. It doesn't even include selection, but it's got all the bells and whistles to enable that for your project. I'm going to be making this in Unreal Engine 5.4.3. You can use any version of Unreal Engine 5. I don't think there'll be much difference. There is no requirement to put this in a new project. If you could put this in an existing project or a plugin. Essentially, we're just going to be creating a component and obviously the material and VFX and some supporting classes. Just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to use the third-person template. We'll need to be C++. Call this. I'm going to call this RTS markers demo. That should give us the template project and our C++ project, which we'll come back to. We're going to start, we'll make the material and the Niagara, is it? I don't know how to say that. We'll make the visual effect. So let's just save this map as our test map. And we'll set it to load with that map. Save us some time later. I'm going to create a folder for materials. I'm going to create a new material. I'm going to call it marker. Call it whatever you like. The new window thing. So I'm just going to come to project settings, or editor preferences, I should say. Change that to main window because we're not psychopaths. And we'll change our marker to translucent unlit. Now we're going to be using a material function from the UI labs. Come back to our research labs here. This here. So you can download this, and I'll include the link in the description, but I'm just going to open this project. This is a UI material lab. I've used it in some of my other videos. Really good resource if you haven't used it before. So in this project there is a whole bunch of stuff, but what I'm after in the material functions, masks, I'm after the wedges, and I'm just going to import this over to my project. So I'm just going to go migrate. That's what I want to migrate. RTS marker example, and then content. Let's put that in there. So I can close that now. And then in here we should have our material labs, material functions, mask, wedge. I'm just going to bring that in because we'll be using that. And it just divides, creates some wedges. I don't know if we can preview it even. Work, maybe not. Oh, there sort of does. That's what it does. We're going to use it just to make a dotted line. Alright, so let's get started on our material. And we might as well just start with a color. So hold on 3, click, convert the parameter, marker, color. Holding S, I'm going to add a parameter for density. Holding M and click, or multiply. Put this to 1 by default. Change this to white. There we go, that's our color. Now we wanted to do this dotted line, so I'm just going to create a scalar parameter. This will be used to turn it off and on. I'll leave it off for now. And then I'm going to do an if statement. So if this is greater than 0, we want to do the dotted line. So I'm going to turn it off and on. So if A is greater than 0, we want to use or equal to, we can do both. And then if it's less than, we're just going to do our normal, whatever we do. So this if statement, actually we'll need to multiply it. So I'm just going to hold M and click again and add a multiplier here, but this will be the opacity in the end. Now we're going to create a radial gradient. So there is a radial gradient exponential. And we're just going to create 2 of those, Control D to duplicate. And I'm going to subtract these from each other. So subtract. And this will be, if it's 0 or less, whatever, that's what we're going to pass in. And then they also want to subtract, multiply that. So the reason I'm not seeing anything, because we did some variables here. So I'm going to create a variable, hold S again, I'm going to call it sharpness. Feel free to use different words here. But basically how sharp the edges are, you can blur it in, you can have different. I highly recommend playing with all these settings, by the way. There's a lot you can do with this setup, but you can see there it's starting to like do the what I was calling sharpness. I don't know what you want to call it. Blend, maybe? I don't know. Now we need so that's the one sharpness, now we need the other sharpness. Let's just duplicate this and rename it. Maybe I should just call it density. Let's call it min density. Sorry. And max density. That'd be better. They're related. And let's set this one 25 and put this in here. So we've got our, what is the dotted line showing up? Oh, sorry, this should be 1, not 0. So yeah, there we go, got our circle. So now we want another scalar parameter, and we're going to call this radius. And I'm going to put this to 0.45. And that is going to go to both. Now I believe that you can see what that's doing, it's changing the thickness. The reason why I'm putting it just the same for now is we're going to adjust it. But so that's a basic ring. If that's all you want for now, you can use that. But I'm going to add, like if you've seen in the demonstration, have that pulsing effect. So let's add that. So what we're going to we'll just duplicate this if statement. And what we're going to do is, if we're not using a pulse, we're just going to output this radius, the same as what we did here. So this will go to the radius phase. Like that. But then if we are using a pulse, we're going to need a scalar parameter for a min pulse radius. And Control D to duplicate again, the max pulse radius. And we're basically going to lerp between these. And that'll be the output. Oops, sorry, not that. That'll be the if it's greater than, sorry. And then we'll need, like here, I'm using a scalar to enable or disable this. I'm going to do the same again. So I'm just going to have pulse, or it could probably say enable pulse enabled. That's not going to do much right now because we need this alpha here. So let's do that. So we're going to use time for that. And so we can change the pulse speed. We'll have a pulse speed. And we'll multiply those. By default, I might make it 0.5, so it's just a bit slower. and then we're going to use the sign. We're going to divide that so we get the one end of it, and add 0.5. And this will be the alpha to our lerp. Now, if we enable this, we should get a pulse. I don't think we're going to see it in the preview, actually. No, but we would. But... oh, sorry, I need a radius. I'm going to put this 0.5 and the max. I think I got that around the other way. There we go, we got a pulse. Swapping the vase is probably not gonna, oh no, well. Yeah, it's still the same. That's okay. Alright, so that's our material done. And we've got some, so we can use this same material for our different types of markers that we want to use, and we can just enable or disable certain features. So we can make it a dotted line, or we can make it pulse, and I'll just set that to off by default. So that is good to go. If you want to keep it neat, we can, in the group settings here, we can put like sections, so it comes up with names under the settings. So we can put that onto pulse, 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 and put this under, I don't know, just settings. So settings. I'll make this one its own one. There we go. So now when we come back in here, come to our materials, create a material instance. We get our sections here. So pulse settings, our general settings, our dotted line. Did we miss one? Oh, the color. Missed the color. You can see it comes up with these generic parameter value names or whatever, so that just adding it to the and yeah, the color's in there now. Just orders it nicely. If you've got a heap of settings, I highly recommend doing that. If it's got this many, it doesn't make much of a difference. Alright, so that's the marker done. In the next part, we'll create the VFX Niagara system.